Hey, deserving listeners, a lot of you have been asking me to react to the new developments in the news story regarding Jordan Peterson and his license being revoked or threatened to be revoked. So let's get into it. I know a little bit about this, but not a lot about it. I've heard things here and there. And I, as a therapist and a professor and a supervisor, someone that is very concerned about ethics and the law, not only for myself and my own practice, but I oversaw a lot of practicing clinicians. I have a lot of interest in this story. So let's watch some of the news stories and familiarize ourselves with the situation. This first video is on the YouTube channel for the CBC, which I believe is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, I'm guessing, CBC.
Where people are attempting to make us speak their language.
He is no stranger to speaking his mind.
What the judiciary is doing in support of the college is wrong.
As we all know.
An Ontario court says the province's College of Psychologists had the authority to tell Peterson to take social media training or face possible disciplinary action.
Okay, so we're hearing from the news reporting that the College of Psychologists of Ontario, I'm actually looking at their page right now. It sounds like a college, right? Like a school, a university, but I'm 90% sure that the College of Psychologists of Ontario is the government regulating body regarding licenses for psychologists in the province of Ontario. In my neck of the woods in Seattle, in Washington State, we would call that the Washington State Department of Licensing. So this governmental agency is in charge of distributing licenses, making sure that the applications for licensure for medical and mental health professionals is on the up and up. There's certain criteria. Also, they are in charge of making sure that you're doing what you need to do to keep your license renewed. There are certain requirements every year that you have to meet. Also, if there are complaints from the clients or from colleagues or from the public, then those complaints are submitted to the licensing board. And in Canada or Ontario, I believe it's this College of Psychologists. So we're hearing that they are requiring, what did they say?
An Ontario court says the province's College of Psychologists had the authority to tell Peterson to take social media training or face possible disciplinary action.
Okay, so they're saying social media training. What does that mean and why? Maybe we'll get into it. And then they say if you don't do this social media training, then the College of Psychologists of Ontario, this government agency, will impose sanctions on his license. Will that be revoking his license? Could be, but that's usually not the case. There's an escalation. People have complained about me. In fact, well, I know about one person that's complained about me. I actually consider it to be kind of a badge of honor. For the first 25 years of my career as a professor and a therapist, I was absolutely paranoid about anyone complaining about my license, as is the case for all my colleagues. Anecdotally, we are a paranoid group of people that worry about the smallest of things. But anyway, so someone has complained about me, and the complaint, this is all speculation because it's not in the complaint record, but I'm pretty sure the complaint happened during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. If you followed me when I was watching that trial and reacting to it, you know that I went through quite a lot emotionally during that time. I am used to commenting in my way. I speculate. I don't diagnose from afar. I provide different points of view from different sides because I don't know the real situation when I'm watching these videos. I don't know Johnny Depp. I don't know Amber Heard. I wasn't there for the psychological assessments. I, of course, wasn't there during the incidents that they were going over. So I tried to provide a lot of caveats and a lot of speculation, making sure that I couch it in speculation. And I would say, well, it could be this, it could be that. And along the way, apparently I was pissing off everybody because everyone was either on one side or the other. And since I wasn't completely on one side or the other, I was this horrible person. And so some people, or at least one person, decided to take action against my license, which is really incredible, to try to prevent me from working with my clients because of an opinion that I said. To be clear, I'm pretty sure during those videos I would always say, I don't know what's going on with Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, but here, let me give you my clinical experience regarding what they're talking about. That's generally what I always do, because that is, in my opinion, and based on a lot of research myself, the more ethical thing to do on social media. The point is, the complaint about me was that I was calling myself Dr. Kirk Honda, but I am not a medical doctor or something like that, which is just astonishing that someone just didn't Google that or something. So I actually framed that complaint. The government sent me a letter saying that the complaint was found to be unfounded, meaning that they didn't even investigate it because the complaint just didn't really make any sense. It was self-evident that it didn't make any sense. And so they sent me a letter, and I actually framed it. Anyway, let's get back to the...
Or face possible disciplinary action.
So it's actually an indefinite sentence, conditional only on what? On what? On what? My compliance? By what standard? To cap it all off, a social media communication expert.
So, yeah, it is a sticky area, but there are things to consider, not necessarily just regarding Jordan Peterson, but in my opinion, the actions of our entire profession on social media. It is a relatively new thing for us as mental health clinicians to consider. The ethical codes, the literature, the research literature doesn't really reflect yet what we're dealing with. We're still trying to figure it out. And I think that this case provides a way for us to further that figuring out.
Who the hell is that?
It followed complaints about some of Peterson's online posts, like one about actor Elliot Page. Peterson said the doctor who removed Page's breasts was a criminal. Another was directed toward a former...
Yeah, I remember hearing about that sort of thing. It's pretty awful, right? It's one thing to talk about politics or to talk about traditional gender roles, I guess, or to talk about free speech. These are all things that I think are associated with Jordan Peterson. But to go after a specific two individuals, not only Elliot Page, but also the physician, to just publicly state that it's wrong that someone had gender-affirming care. Like, one, what? Two, it's literally unscientific to say that, because we understand through science that for some people, their gender identity is different than the body that they were born into. And to actually feel themselves changing their body is very, very important. If you're a private citizen, it's not great that you say those kinds of things, but you don't have a licensing board that is dictating whether or not you're following the standard of care and whether or not you're following the ethical codes, which involve following the science, also involve making sure that you represent the profession well, also involve making sure that you're not harming people. You know, imagine if you're a trans client and you want to see Jordan Peterson, or you're assigned Jordan Peterson, and you heard about these public statements by Jordan Peterson, then that's a problem. That's why we have licensing boards, right? In the same way that we have a driver's licensing board, right? You can have your driver's license revoked. You know, why do we have that? Well, because if it is found that you are irresponsible and dangerous with your driving, then there could be sanctions, including revoking your license, saying you just can't drive anymore because we have determined that you're a liability and that you're going to harm people, you're a high risk, and so we're just going to take away your ability to drive. It's the same with the license to practice. We need some safeguards to protect the public. Again, if you're just a pundit, someone that is just having a YouTube channel, or you're not a practicing clinician, then not great, but okay. But if you're practicing, that's what a license is. It is a license to practice, a license to be in the care of individual clients and patients. And if this happened to me, let's just say that this happened to me, that someone complained about me or whatever, and the licensing board came to me and said, you need to go through this social media training because of these 4 things that we identified as a risk to your clients and to the public. I wouldn't be enthusiastic about that, but I'd comply. I certainly wouldn't freak out about it, especially if I got the impression that they weren't out to get me or anything, sort of paranoia about it. I'd go through it and maybe I'd learn a couple things. Be like, oh, okay. At least I'd learn where their standard was, that sort of thing. And then I'd probably change my behavior. I don't know how that would go. So, it's not that big of a deal. That it's not like the jackboot thugs are showing up on Jordan Peterson's doorstep and hauling him away to a re-education camp or something. It's just like, hey, these few things are probably not great. You can say all the other things, but these few things, who knows what their motivation was, but I could imagine that being the case, right?
Ottawa City Councillor who uses they-them pronouns, describing Catherine McKinney as, quote, an appalling, self-righteous, moralizing thing.
Inciting any type of hatred that could lead to, a risk to someone's well-being does start to cross that line.
Yeah, it's a well-understood phenomenon that has been around for as long as human society has been around, that you don't have to say the thing to communicate the thing. You can say phrases like, I want to make sure that our borders are strong. But really what's being communicated is, actually, there was a recent Black Mirror episode that did this pretty well. There's a scene with a politician, and he doesn't say outright, I'm a racist and I want to get the brown people out of Britain. But he talks about immigration. He talks about, strong borders, this kind of thing. And that's what he's communicating, is he wants to get rid of the brown people, and the voters, the white voters that are also racist, receive that communication. So, who knows what Jordan Peterson meant to communicate, but it's possible that it was received that way. It's also possible that it was communicated that. I don't know. So that is something that you have to be responsible for. And I think about that all the time as someone in social media. I sometimes will say things that will be interpreted in a way that I didn't mean it to be. And so I will apologize for that, or I'll try to get out ahead of that, or I'll try not to say it like that, or I'll try to make sure that I really explain myself fully. That's part of the reason why I yammer so much, because I don't want to be misunderstood, which happens sometimes.
The court wrote Peterson cannot have it both ways. He cannot speak as a member of a regulated profession without taking responsibility for the risk of harm that flows from him speaking in that trusted capacity.
Don't bloody well lecture me, some dimwit judge with a liberal bias, lecturing me about taking responsibility for what I say.
Peterson says both it...
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if I believed I was right, I might think similar things. I wouldn't say them on the internet, but I might if I thought like him. I'm just trying to be in his shoes. That I also wonder about his personality. Like I said earlier, if it were me, I'm pretty sure. I mean, again, it depends on the circumstance, but I would just do it. I'd be like, okay, let's see what this is like. And if it ends up being draconian, then I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But I don't know what they mean by social media training. Maybe it's actually quite pleasant. Maybe it's just an hour of talking with someone. Maybe I'll learn something. That's a reflection of my personality. I don't know what labels we would put to it, flexible at the very least. But Jordan Peterson, given the way that he behaves, it'd be hard to imagine that he would do that, right? Also, given the things that he talks about, the sort of things that he preaches, and his followers, I'm going to take a guess and say that they would consider it to be, a real beta move if he were to submit in that way. The alpha beta cuck thing, there's an obsession with power that they have and humiliation. I imagine a lot of these folks experience a lot of powerlessness and a lot of humiliation growing up in their families, in schools, this kind of thing. And so there's just this obsession with establishing themselves as the alpha, or trying to determine who is the alpha. And to me, I didn't really go through those kinds of traumas. So to me, I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's something to pay attention to, but it's certainly not the focus of my life, And so I imagine that given his personality, or given what he preaches, or given what he thinks his customers are looking to him to be like, it would be really hard for him to just be flexible and go along with it and see what happens.
And the college overreached. This law professor disagrees.
When it comes to licensing bodies of like certain regulated professions, there are limits that are imposed that are part of upholding the integrity and the professionalism that comes with being a lawyer or being a psychologist.
Right, exactly. I was saying that earlier. We need some kind of standard. There has to be some kind of, otherwise, why does the regulating body exist at all? If you want to be a private citizen, a non-clinician, a non-licensed clinician, and spout politically or whatever, within reason, yeah, okay. But if you are in the care of patients and you're representing the profession, then there are standards. There are certain things that you have to consider. And saying the things that Jordan Peterson says is probably beyond that threshold. You know, if you drive drunk and are caught 5 times in a month, there are standards. You should have your license sanctioned or removed because you're unsafe to the public. If you're a clinician and you are saying bigoted things about individuals that are, one, being harmed by the things you're saying, and also you're inciting a whole group, millions of people to also be bigoted. Not only that, but you have a license to practice. You have a license to treat individuals, including trans individuals. So do we want a known bigot of trans people to be licensed by the government to provide care to trans people? No.
The decision will no doubt only add fuel to the fire worldwide between Peterson's supporters and detractors. Peterson says if he loses his license in Ontario, he'll get one elsewhere. In the meantime, he plans to appeal the court's decision.
And, to be cynical about it, another angle to this is that this is just helping his career. It gives his base, his followers, more rage, and because he can control the narrative about that. Because, it's the licensing board probably doesn't have a big YouTube channel or a big Twitter following, or even cares to. So he can control the narrative in that way. It gives him a lot of content to talk about. I don't want to accuse him of anything, but there's a possibility that if he wasn't famous, he might say, well, okay, fine, I'll do it. But he might be thinking, well, this actually could mean more clout, more money, more fame. This actually kind of proves different points that I've been making about the overstepping of culture and the government. That's what I've been basing my entire career on. That I believe that's how he got started, was around these issues. So, I don't want to accuse him of anything, but it's possible that it's actually a savvy move to push back. Even if he does lose his license, he'll be a martyr, right? So, well, it's kind of depressing to think about. Okay, well, let's adjourn there and tune in next time when I continue following this story. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.